Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Moa aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today we're here with the Mackmyra, and it's their Mackmyra Brukswhisky. So this is a whiskey I believe which was first released in 2010. It is part of their core range, and it's kind of one of their entry-level whiskies. It's bottled at 41.4% ABV, and it contains whiskies from both 200 and 100 litre casks. It has kind of an unpeated profile, but there is a touch of kind of their peated recipe in there as well. And it's both ex-bourbon casks, ex-sherry and virgin Swedish oak that have influenced the whiskies that go into this single malt. It also of course has a stunning bottle with all these little kind of sketches and illustrations of their distillery and some casks, and it has a little text with the tasting notes from Angela talking about what it's like. I think Brooks is a really interesting whiskey. I think sometimes I get the question, if I can only try one Mackmyra, which one would it be? And unless you're a peathead or someone who's super fascinated and basically only drinks peated whiskies, I would recommend Brukswhisky. It is a good example of a bit of a different whiskey, but it still has so much character, and it just has a lovely flavour, I think. I of course like a lot of the other ones as well, like ESTER-Y is one of my favourites. It's with whiskies that have been matured in birch wine sap casks, but this is just kind of a classic base, just showcasing the character of Mackmyra. So if you want recommendations from me, this one's good, and it's also one of the more affordably priced ones. So I mean, if you're starting out with Swedish whiskey, why not give it a go? But we're gonna have a little look on the nose, of course, and a little taste. So let's start with the nose. And before I review this bottle has been open for quite a while, so I would imagine that it's slightly toned down as quite a lot of oxygen's got into it. It's only a tiny wee bit left, so I might have to get another one soon. But it's so estery. It has so much kind of pear aromas. It's like those green fruits, almost a little bit like foam bananas as well. Like foam bananas and fresh, juicy apples. When you talk about esters, like estery alcohols or esters in whiskey, it's usually these kind of fruity notes, and the more esters you have, the kind of fruitier your spirit is. And always when I try this, I just experience it as probably the most estery whiskey I've ever tried. So if you want something super fruity and super it is sweet on the nose, but I don't think it's overpoweringly sweet, and it's a different sweetness to perhaps your grain whiskies, because it's like an oily, dense sweetness is what it feels like. And it's like if that banana flavour came in like a jelly consistency of candy, perhaps, that kind of density to it. A bit of kind of a forest vibe, almost a little bit like pine as well. But I think for me, of course, a lot of people experience esters differently, and for some it will be a specific thing, and for others another thing. That's what's so fun about tasting notes, because they're all so individual. But this one for me is overwhelmingly pears. It does have a hint of that foam banana and that little kind of forest pine woodiness, but it's primarily that pear note that comes through. But let's have a little taste. Skål! Still so fruity and juicy on the palate. It's just like a burst of like crisp fruits. Like those pears is definitely the main thing that I'm getting. On the palate, it also has a hint of that oakiness, the kind of pine oakiness. And it does remind me of a Swedish forest, and I think, which is something I generally get in peated Swedish whiskies. But and the sweetness is there. It's that oily, dense sweetness. it almost reminds me of drinking a liqueur. Something like Exante, or maybe you say Sante. It's a pear liqueur or a pear cognac liqueur, or like a banana liqueur or something. It's of course not as like hyped up or like so much or so dense or so sweet, but this kind of sweet density reminds me of kind of the thickness you can get in a liqueur. But perhaps if you mix the liqueur with whiskey and then you got more of a whiskey kind of mouthfeel and that strength of the alcohol, I don't know how to explain it, but it definitely has like a denser, oilier sweetness. It's a nice mouthfeel, like fairly oily on the mouthfeel as well. A bit like jelly sweets. Maybe a bit of kind of lemon marmalade or something like that, because it has almost like a sour feel, but this sour note you would find if you had like something sweet, like if you made a sour fruit or like gooseberries or lemons or something into a marmalade, you'd still have the kind of tart influence, but also the sweetness. So yeah, it does have this kind of other vibe to it. Being so fresh and fruity, it's still things underneath that makes it really interesting. And the oakiness is there underneath. I would say you get a fair amount of oakiness coming through, which is a slightly dry forest woodiness. Like an autumn, dry autumn woodiness, because it is quite dark in a way. Summer woodiness for me would be something quite light and quite maybe towards like a barbecue or something like that, but this is more like if you're out in the forest in autumn and you can smell the trees and this kind of fresh oakiness, even though it's quite dry, which is quite nice, and it kind of carries the fruitiness. It leaves a really interesting feeling in your mouth, and it feels a little bit minty. Like if you put mint leaves in water and when you drink the water, it has this slight influence of the mintiness, which also helps the feeling of the flavor feel fresher. Yeah. Like minty pear liqueur meets foam bananas, perhaps. The nose is just becoming more and more fruity for me. But I mean, I guess you can tell what I think of this whiskey. I really like it. I would of course be so curious to hear what you think. And we did a little comparison of all the Mackmyras that we have at home. And this was in my top 3 for sure, alongside the Eva and which was the other one? Can't remember now. But if you would like to see me do like a big Mackmyra comparison here on YouTube perhaps, please let me know in the comments below. I'm of course always happy to try and tailor to what you would like to see. And of course, if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and my other social channels, I'd be absolutely over the moon if you consider using my affiliate links the next time you're shopping with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange or the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. All the information is in the description here below, as well as links to my Patreon, my Teespring shop, my Instagram and my website if you're curious about that. And of course, as always, a massive thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. Your support means so much to me. Thank you. And of course, I do have some interesting videos coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe and perhaps leave a like if you like this video. And I'm planning a little episode on Bimber Distillery, a little one comparing different Bunnahavens. So yeah, there's a few fun ones coming up soon. But I hope you've all had an absolutely wonderful day. Slán Skål!